A very warm welcome to you all. Welcome to the latest in our Breakfast Briefing series. My name is Paul Lewis, one of the co-founders of Seismic, and despite the name by my on my screen being Claire Rainsford, Claire's very kindly hosting this morning one of our speakers from Taylor Wessing, very honoured to be welcoming you to our breakfast briefing this morning, which the subject for this month is how to get started with your ESG strategy. And I think for some, or perhaps most, started might be restarted or accelerated, but it absolutely all applies. And I suppose the context of where we are today, as we are here in London, we have many over in Dubai at COP. So whilst we've got in COP Bill Gates, John Kerry and Al Gore speaking this morning, you're going to be equally pleased with your speaker lineup that we have for you. So I'm going to put the agenda up now, and we've got kind of a morning of two halves for you. First of all, we're going to do a deep dive, really looking at the value of ESG strategy, really thinking strategically, the practicalities of how to get started, or as I say, restarted, and then really about the execution and the communication. Building a strategy is nothing if you cannot turn that into reality. Fantastic panel we've got this morning, which I'll introduce in a few minutes. We've got some real leaders who are on the ground practitioners leading the way in their organizations, building strategic roadmaps and toolkits for their organizations that they represent. We're going to leave time for some Q&A. My commitment to you is that we'll be out of here by 10 o'clock UK time. And we'll dive straight in. A quick intro to those that don't know who Seismic is. We're a team of international sustainability experts. We're really passionate about our mission, which is helping businesses prosper by becoming an increasingly impactful force for good. And we do that in a number of ways through our growing team of international change makers, as we are. Really excited about the range of organizations that we work with, which span a lot of different sectors, a lot of different sizes. And I think what we're really keen to do is bring best practice from sectors across into different sectors to help organizations and communities in the work that we do. So you'll recognize several of those logos, I'm sure. There's those that are really pioneering in the work that they do, from the Patagonias or the Pucker Herbs. It's a real privilege to be working with all of our clients, but we get a real kick out of helping organizations build and start and grow their sustainability journeys from the ground up. So we do really, we do our work through 6 mediums of service, which is essentially, first and foremost, strategy work that we're talking about today. Of course, the alphabet soup of reporting and disclosure, regulatory landscape is coming at all of us at speed. Carbon and net zero, a lot of technical work that we do there. B Corp is an interesting topic, which I think you'll hear a little bit about this morning, perhaps, using the principles of B Corp to build the strategic work that we do. I think that's a very interesting area of work we do. Communications, we need to communicate that fine line between green hushing and green washing. Got to be authentic in our work. Ali's going to be talking a little bit about that. And then capacity building, really enabling organizations to have the right skills, the right capacity, the right resource to be able to turn their ambitions into reality. So very quickly, myself and Ali, who are your hosts today, I'm one of the co-founders of Seismic. I've been working in sustainability and ESG for about 20 years, worked with probably 400 organizations to help them build their sustainability strategies and then turn them into reality. And I'm really excited to introduce you to Ali. Ali's one of our all-star sustainability consultants, who's worked with over 70 companies in Seismic to help them strategically build their roadmaps, and also doing a lot of work from a materiality point of view helping understand from a materiality assessment perspective. So before I hand over to Ali, I've got a quick question for everyone. If you could be poised on your keyboard, could you share with us where you are on your journey? And we're being overly simplistic here by trying to ask you to force yourself into one of three categories. But if you are, perhaps you consider yourself early stage, considering your approach, that's a 1. Developing, have a strategy in place, perhaps needs refreshing or accelerating, that's a 2. And then you perhaps more on the mature side, you see that you've got something that's perhaps more advanced, then that would be a 3. Okay, so we've got a good range of numbers coming in here. It's interesting. I think probably 2s have it, perhaps a few 1s and a few 2s. If you put a 3 in, then beware, we may be coming to you for some opinions. But thank you for sharing. That's really useful. So Ali, I'm going to hand over to you now, who's going to really, first of all, help us look at what is an authentic ESG strategy. And hopefully that context is useful for you, Ali. Over to you.
Thanks so much, Paul. So yeah, we're starting today looking at what is an ESG strategy. So it's a vehicle for change. It's a business model that prioritizes responsible and sustainable decision making, and it's a framework that includes a clear ambition and a roadmap on how to get there. So it's a tool that's useful on driving this change, and we're going to unpack a little bit more about it and how it's used in day-to-day by businesses. So integration of ESG in core business strategy, if even as recent as 5 years ago, I think we saw ESG as a completely distinct thing. It was kind of a add-on or in a silo of tagging onto corporate services, HR, office management, operations, that kind of thing. They were tactical, it was compliance driven, and they were 2 distinct areas that a business were driving towards and focusing on. But now we're starting to see a shift on how businesses prioritize their impact, and we're moving towards business strategy and ESG strategy becoming one. In the last few years, we've seen it come together. The businesses and organizations have started to consider ESG with more of a strategic, effective alignment, bringing them together and driving the journey forward holistically. And what we're beginning to encourage is this understanding of business strategy and ESG strategy fully integrating, so that you're prioritizing your social and environmental impact in day-to-day decision making. So KPIs, targets, goals on ESG and ambition are integrated into company scorecards, reportings. We're being intentional and proactive in the way that we're driving forward your impact until they're 2 completely and totally integrated strategies. And what we're here today to talk about is challenging you to think even bigger and better, where your ESG and sustainable impact is kind of the main focus of your strategy. It improves your resilience and allows for your organization to really prioritize your ESG impact and put it at the forefront. So a nice example here is one of our clients, Patagonia, who's been in the limelight a lot recently, and through their business strategy, it's serving this wider impact. Their sustainable strategy and initiatives and intentional way forward is really leading the way here. And so instead of seeing it as 2 distinct things, we're seeing it as one in the same, driving each other forward, going hand in hand. So what does an ESG strategy include? We've got 6 areas here. We call it your sustainability toolbox. So to begin with, we've got your baseline. This is essentially a mechanism to understand your current performance level and evaluation. So where are you currently sitting? Where do the foundations lie? Where are we building up from? All those kind of conversations. Then we've got materiality. This is a materiality view, what's important and relevant to your organization. This might be through engaging with internal or external stakeholders. We've then got ambition setting, and sometimes this looks like as well as developing your pillars that sit within your strategy. But ambitions is thinking big, thinking about that North Star, looking ahead. Where is it that you want to get to? We've then got industry landscape. So this can look like a peer review. What are others doing in the space? Understanding industry legislation, what will be coming in, those kind of conversations. We've also got targets. So this helps with, I guess, the ambition setting and thinking big, but targets are this measurable thing that you're going to be looking back to. So it can be KPIs, it can be SMART targets, it can be goals. And that helps keep you accountable and drive you forward to make sure you're confident in that you're reaching your ambitions and where you're trying to get to. And then we've got an action plan. So this is the technical detail that sits behind your ESG strategy as to how are you actually going to get there? What are the individual tasks, actions, work streams? What is the actual individual initiative, policy, practice that you'll be driving forward and improving to improve your impact? So now that we've understood what is an ESG strategy, we're going to look a little bit as to why is an ESG strategy important. So the power of a strong strategy is accountability. So ensure that there's a commitment and accountability for responsible and ethical practices. This can be internally holding yourselves to account, or that accountability and transparency also to your external stakeholders. We've got secondly, engagement. So internal engagement, creating that strategy, rolling it out. There's a shared sense of motivation, long-term engagement and commitment with the team, giving your team autonomy to drive your strategy and impact forwards. And then external, we've talked about that material lens. So a process of integrating stakeholders' views and priorities as they both impact you and you impact your stakeholders. We've then got focus. So this is about prioritization. We can't do everything all at once. So the power of a strong ESG strategy really prioritizes that and allows you to have the tools to be able to make the most impact in these areas, identifying the material ESG topics that will cut through the noise and create clarity and coherence for the building of the strategy. We've then got resilience as number 4. So this is building a long-term resilience, minimizing risk, proactive to external measures, all of these kind of things about understanding industry best practice, what are your peers doing, and being a step ahead, and also minimizing those risks of external pressures, understanding what's on the horizon with legislation or regulation coming in. And then we've got momentum. So building momentum within the team outlined through a roadmap, something to build and drive forward so that you're aware of what are the next steps, what are we moving towards. And then we've got impact, which is just really a strategy maximizes your sustainability impact with all of the 5 areas that we've run through now. A better awareness and clarity ultimately equals success. So understanding the why strategy is so important, also looking at how it impacts you as an organization. So growth is such a huge area for this. We've got a quote on the screen: purpose-led businesses will lead to higher levels of growth. This is from the Purpose Dividend, and £149 billion a year boost to GDP is estimated impact on the UK economy if all businesses were purpose-led. So purpose-led businesses will invest more in their business when their peers, raising the quality of the products and services and increasing the productivity. Customers are likely to pay more for the services as a consequence of their higher quality and be more loyal to their greater confidence in their purpose. So we've got growth as a really big one here. And then we've got resilience next. So research shows companies that have taken their sustainability strategies the furthest are doing the best. A nice stat on the screen shows 88% of research shows solid ESG practices result in better operational performance. This comes from research that identifies a number of companies across sectors that did particularly well, precisely the companies that were taking their sustainability strategies the furthest. And then the final one to just share is we've got another one around customers. So customers today expect transparency, responsibility, and action from companies they buy from. 76% of people think business has a responsibility to people and planet. So customers is a really big one that are asking for companies to put this at the forefront, to prioritize their sustainability, and a strategy will really help you communicate that, get your ducks in a row, be able to share that with your external stakeholders. So we've just shared 3 areas: customers, resilience, and growth, but there's amongst others that are really widely researched now, including retention of your employees, investor attraction, those kind of things. So tying that into a nice example now is that we really love working with companies who are looking to build their sustainability performance in a strategic way. We've really enjoyed working with Dash, helping them become a leader in this space, using their strategy as a vehicle for change. The success of Dash has been seen off the back of these decisions and really prioritizing their sustainability strategy, resulting in this huge commercial growth as a well-known and loved product with real brand identity and therefore customer retention. So now that we've understood a little bit more as to the why sustainability and your ESG strategy is so important, let's dig into the how to get started. We've got your baseline on this left-hand side of your screen. So that's the first area to begin with. We often talk about the B Corp framework, or you can use another current performance framework or tool to help you understand that in detail. The B Corp framework is known as the B Impact Assessment. You can go into it and there's 200 questions across all levels of your business, so 5 stakeholder areas, and it's really good to understand that current positioning and that current level, what's going on right now, where are we at, and a foundation to build up from. It's also an opportunity to engage your employees, get buy-in, get them understanding why you're on this journey, where you're moving to. Once you have your baseline, we can then start thinking about your ambition. So align these with your purpose and your mission and your vision. If you haven't set those yet, it's a good time to start thinking about it. But what are you driving towards? Where do you want this strategy to take you? Think big, think expansive. That's where number 2, the ambitions, is coming from. And then we're linking it all together with building your roadmap. So step 3, how do you bridge that gap? How do you get from your baseline to where your ambitions are set? And what are you going to do in getting yourself there? So you can allocate resources, you create timelines, you project manage. All of these things help you roll out the day-to-day cultural shift and embedding best practices and your roadmap into your business. So what we've got is a nice diagram of where you're starting, where you're getting to, and how you're going to make that journey. But this next slide is showing us that it's not quite so distinct as just doing it once and you're done and your strategy's set and you're ready to go. We like to view it as a little bit of a wheel because it's consistently evolving. It's an iterative process. We revisit and review it and see how you're tracking up against it. It allows you to be agile and flexible. What's working, what's not a priority anymore, what should you be reprioritizing? And so this diagram shows us that we are on that left-hand side defining your baseline, which drives your ambition, which helps identify the roadmap. And then as you're working towards this might be year 2, but your roadmap progresses, results in a baseline refresh or update to understand that, and allows you to think bigger and better, or maybe just laterally to adapt your ambitions, and therefore we need a new roadmap into getting there. So I think this is just a really important slide to pause on, of that it's not you do your strategy and that's rigid and that's forever. It helps you with a long-term thinking, but this iterative process also helps you drive forward the most impactful change. It helps you reprioritize, those kind of things. So digging a little bit into the baseline, which is defining the now. Part of this will be consulting relevant stakeholders. So understanding the opinions and concerns of stakeholders, integrating a wider range of perspectives into your ESG strategy, and engaging them in your sustainability journey. So you impact your stakeholders, and as a result, they're also impacting you. So integrating what's a priority, what's relevant and important to them is really important to understanding what's your now and your current state. We've also talked about utilising a framework. We use, again, the B Corp framework. It gives you this clarity on your performance, on your social, environmental and governance, best practices. What are your strengths and why? Where are your blind spots? Where are the gaps? It gives you this full clarity of the picture. And then another recommendation we have at the bottom is be realistic and conservative. There's no benefit to inflating that score or kind of trying to squeeze out some more strength. The baseline, the phase 1, is just having this realistic view of this is where we start right now. This is okay. It will find some of those strengths. It will also make you aware of some of those gaps, but it gives you that really strong foundation that's realistic to be able to build off of. We've then got your ambition, which is articulating the future. So refine your mission, vision, and purpose. That might be your starting place. You might not have one yet. You might be going back to it and checking that it still works for your team, your organization, but clearly define your why. Why does your company exist? Why do your employees get out of bed in the morning? What value do you create from the world? And clearly articulating this will provide the much needed direction for your organization and gain buy-in from the team. Getting board and leadership buy-in is embedding ESG into the business strategy and DNA warrant sponsorship and oversight from the board. It needs people to be really bought in and driving it forward, and activating your directors, your shareholders, your leadership team on this long-term vision for the business so that everyone is bought in that this is their direction you're going in. And then considering what is material. So again, we've talked about you can't do everything all at once. So what's important and relevant, thinking about internal and external engagement and deciding and prioritizing the answers to that. And what impacts you the most and where can you have the most impact? So being really strategic with what is material to your company and what's going to be prioritized in your ESG strategy. We've then got the roadmap, which is rolling out the how. So we've got the action plan and targets. This is about developing the work streams. What are those specific tangible actions or tasks that are going to be allocated? Setting targets or goals. So you know what you're working towards. You have a real clarity on tracking how you're progressing. And you also have that accountability and transparency. We've then got number 2, which is resources. How can you integrate with existing programs? What are the resources, timelines, and funding that you have available? Who is accountable? So all of these questions are really important. And the who is accountable might be that you have a project manager who has oversight over all of your ESG initiatives. It might mean that you're sort of divvying it up and you've got some work stream leads who are driving this forward. And that's all to do with the project management of actually putting your ESG strategy into action. And then 3, we've got engagement, which we've talked about quite a lot already, but your ESG strategy and the roadmap of rolling it out really engages your team. It becomes everyday culture. They understand the why and how to drive it forwards. And it starts to become the day-to-day, and until what we're aiming for is that you've got pockets of ideas and opportunities that are discovered and driven by everyone. Everyone is responsible collectively for your impact journey. And to wrap it all up, we've got communication and getting it right. So it's really important once you've built out your strategy that you're engaging people and communicating it in the right way. So it's all about the journey. No business will ever be perfect. Don't wait for all the milestones to have been achieved to communicate that. You're already doing the work and your stakeholders want to know about it, but also everyone's sort of in this playing field of just trying to do the best with what they have. So learning from each other, sharing ideas and opportunities is a really useful mechanism for communication. We've then got being authentic. So the journey is not always easy. Being able to communicate transparency about the ambition set, the progress made, but also some of the pitfalls. What are the learning opportunities, and where are you going to use those learnings to drive forward and make the next decision? And then we've got back it up. So having that robust ESG strategy will help you with your communications and with the evidence needed. Monitoring progress, setting those targets, having those KPIs are all ensuring you've got credibility on your ESG journey. So finally, we've got choosing a framework to measure your impact. It's an alphabet soup out there. There's a bunch of frameworks and useful tools that exist in the ESG space. I think there's another breakfast briefing needed to cover all of these, but they are useful. And the one that we want to specifically call out here is the B Corp framework, which we've mentioned before. You don't have to certify. And it's a free tool that you can go on to use it. We use the BIA with a lot of our clients who aren't looking at certification, who are just using a tool to improve their ESG strategy and their impact. And there's 200 questions that are relevant and specific to your business, your industry, that is really useful to get that holistic view. And be able to set a foundation and that baseline to build up from, and then also to challenge you and to be thinking, where can we make the most impact? What are the best practices in the space? So it also can give you those ideas for setting that ambition. So to wrap up, I'm going to hand over to Paul, who's going to start our panel.
Ali, thank you so much. You covered a lot of ground there in a short amount of time. I think we pride ourselves at Seismic in speaking in human language, which is sometimes very difficult to do in the world of sustainability. And we all survived 20 slides there without a 3 or a 4-letter acronym on it, which I think is admirable. So yeah, we couldn't get through the whole thing with that alphabet soup. But thank you, Ali. You covered the baseline, which is the now, moving into the ambition, which is obviously about the future. You encouraged us all to think broadly and more expansively in that sense. And then obviously that deep dive into the how in very, very practical terms, in terms of building that roadmap. A lot of it is about stakeholder engagement and communication. I'm sure we will hear more of that now as we turn to our panel session. I'm just going to introduce each of them. I must start with my host, who's hosting me this morning, Claire. So Claire is Head of Sustainability at Taylor Wessing, which is an international law firm. I think 28 offices internationally, about 300 partners, 1,000 lawyers within it. Obviously, an incredible amount of impact opportunity. Claire's been in the business for about 6 months, and I'm sure we'll hear. It'd be great to hear about your wider career as well as what you've been up to and what you're looking to do at Taylor Wessing. And then we've got Evan Laframboise, who is a senior manager at Altum. Really enjoying her work with Altum, experienced provider of alternative asset and corporate services, financial reporting, funds and family office solutions. So really interesting influence as well as control that Altum have particularly in the financial setting. So looking forward to hearing more of that from you, Evan. Thank you. And then last but not least is Alina Darragh, who is the Global Environmental Programme Director at WD-40, a brand that I'm sure we almost all of us know and love. High value, easy to use solutions across a range of maintenance applications. And I think it's a fascinating case study to bring. And we've recently started work with WD-40, really enjoying our work with them. So perhaps if I can start with you, Claire, just a bit of an introduction as to what you see as the role of ESG strategy in the work that you're doing, and a bit of your personal take on that would be wonderful.
Sure. So yes, I've only been at Taylor Wessing for about 6 months. So previously was in consulting at EY, so we've done a lot of strategy work with different organisations. But I think the main thing for me is that bit about materiality and really understanding what's really material to your business, what your stakeholders are thinking, and then evaluating that and looking through, okay, where's the value as an organisation that we need to protect? So what do we need to do to protect that value? Or hopefully then thinking through as well, where can we add value? So where can we increase the opportunity for the company? So where can we really closely align to the growth of the company? Because most companies want to grow in some shape or form. So I'd say those are the main things I've tended to focus on since I've been here, but I am mainly focused on the carbon strategy at the minute, because that's where we're seeing an area that we really want to accelerate and move towards a science-based target.
Thank you very much, Claire. Evan, can I pass over to you?
Of course, yeah. For us, it's very much a case of the same as what Claire's saying. We had to do a materiality assessment to understand where we had the biggest impact. I think one of the first things we did is a staff internal survey to see what people wanted to do, but it was also interesting to see what we actually had the biggest impact on, which was quite different to what we all cared about as well. So I think trying to find that balance was really quite a big thing for us.
Great. Okay, so more, again, focus on materiality there. And Alina, can I pass over to you now in terms of the context at WD-40?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. So WD-40, as you said, global brand, well known, and historically we've been really strong with S&G and maybe not so much in an environmental space. So our focus is on environmental at the moment. And you've touched on it. Materiality is very important, but for us, it's the integration. You have to integrate your ESG strategy with your business strategy. It has to be one.
Great, thank you, Alina. Yeah, that kind of ties back to Ali's first point about bringing the worlds of sustainability and business together. And they've absolutely got to be integrated. It'd be great to hear a little bit more about that later on, but you've each kind of mentioned that materiality. And I was wondering if you could share a little bit more about that process for you, what was important, and I think importantly, how you use it to gain stakeholder interest and engagement in the subject of sustainability. Whoever would like to kick off on that would be great.
I can go briefly, but I haven't actually had to do so much of the actually meeting people. So essentially, in the 6 months I've been here, I needed to understand, like, say, what the most important topic areas were. So I did a survey of, I did a peer analysis as to what other people were doing and covering. I looked at what our employees were talking about, but it was mainly desktop. In the last month, though, we have started to do some engagement with some key clients to understand what they thought was important around ESG. So I'd say sort of initially it was a desktop assessment, and I'm starting to now back that up with actually getting out there and talking to different stakeholder groups. But that will develop, I think, over the next year as well.
Yeah. And just on the external stakeholder groups, how are they finding that? What's the sort of reaction that you're getting?
Because I suppose the ones that you asked, would you like to join in and understand, we're doing some work on our ESG strategy, would you like to join in? You kind of get hands up from the ones that are quite motivated on it, right? So it's a little bit self-selecting that those guys are motivated. But generally the feedback from all of them actually has been really positive around the fact that we wanted to talk about it because they were obviously motivated on the subject. So I think it's definitely helped to build relationships with them, to realize actually we do have quite similar values, we're on a similar journey. So I'd say it was a really positive thing to do, actually. Yeah.
Yep.
And generally, I think they were saying, actually, why didn't you do this earlier? Like, do more of this, essentially. It was like what feedback was, actually engage more with us.
Fantastic. Alina, Evan, it'd be great to get a little bit more depth from your experiences of those, that the kind of understanding what is material and that stakeholder interaction that you were talking about.
Sure, I can jump in here. I think it's purpose of materiality is understanding what's important to all your stakeholders. So when we did our materiality study, we interviewed our board, but also employees and some customers. So you actually listening to what's important to your stakeholders, and you bringing them on that journey. They feel part of your process, and I think that's the key thing to take from materiality. You're not going to ask them, do you think we should be better at ESG? You're asking them what's important to you as our stakeholder in this process. And I see that, if you haven't done materiality study, you have to do it. I mean, it's a great journey to understanding what you should be doing, and it can inform your decisions going forward.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like what Ali was saying before. Sure. Yeah, we kind of did a workshop business wide. So we got all our kind of internal key stakeholders from all different departments, sat down. We chose the framework of the UN SDGs to use. So looking at all the targets set with each of those goals, mapped it against what are our activities of our business, how we impact those with the day-to-day things that we carry out with our activities. And then exactly what Ali was kind of saying before, doing that whole look in the mirror, where are we at kind of right now? It might not be great, we might not like what we see in the mirror, but we have to kind of set that baseline of, how to then make that roadmap and set ambitions from that. So yeah, I think choosing the framework to do your materiality assessment was really useful for us.
Yeah, great. Thanks. Thank you, Evan. Ali might have some comments on this. We often find from our clients, certain members of leadership teams say, look, I know what's important. I know this business inside and out. We don't need to actually have that wider stakeholder engagement. We have quite a kind of clear view that that's important. I wonder if each of you have encountered that from certain members of your team, and how have you broached that, if you have?
I'm not sure actually that our team has said that to me. So they no, I think they were amenable to going on the journey and finding out more. But obviously I haven't done a really extensive. So maybe if I was trying to pitch for a bigger more extensive piece of work, maybe I'd have got more pushback, but no, I didn't get pushback on that they said they knew what we needed to cover. I think they had an idea as to things that were important, but they were definitely amenable to reaching out and listening, especially to clients. So I think that probably plays into everybody really wants to know their clients more and make sure that they're really getting, aligning as much as possible and getting as much growth with those clients and developing those relationships. So I think probably because of that angle, I didn't get any pushback on, oh, we know our clients, it's fine.
Right.
So
Interesting. Yeah. I wonder if kind of navigating certain, people who are maybe neutral or somewhat on the skeptical side, Evan or Alina, if you've got any experiences to share on that.
I think it's very similar with a personal feedback. If you don't do 360 feedback, you might have an impression of yourself. And it's the same with a company. Materiality study is literally a 360 feedback of what's important to your stakeholders. So if you haven't asked that question, you don't really know. I mean, one person can assume they know very well the business, but quite often it's their own perspective only.
We've got a question from Honor from
I agree.
Oh, sorry, Evan, after you. Yeah, there's a slight lag there. Go on.
Sorry, I was just gonna completely agree with that. I think it's also how you bring those people along your journey, not just it's quite easy to send out requests for data when you're trying to do this whole exercise, but I think bringing people on that journey, kind of trying to find the narrative that touches on what's important to them as well, helps kind of bring everyone on that journey with you. So that's something I definitely helped us especially get people on board.
Right. Okay. A really good question from Honor. How often do you recommend doing a materiality assessment? And Ali, I'm sure you've got a view on that as well.
I can start. I think we encourage our clients as best practice to think about doing it annually, but there's also the opportunity if it's biannually, it's just having the process in place so that it's a regular thing that you're, again, as we've been talking about the ESG strategy, it's not set, done, tick off the to-do list. It's something you're continually thinking about as your stakeholders might start to change if you're growing or your customer base is shifting, whatever it is, it's re-engaging your stakeholders because there's going to be new priorities due to external factors like legislation or the cost of living, those kind of things. And then also your stakeholders might be shifting as well. So it's making sure that you're incorporating those new priorities, new voices into your decision-making.
Any other comments on that?
I would say it depends on the size of the business as well, because it might be costly, it might be quite time consuming for your resources. So you have to think about the size of your business and the need and what you're going to do with that data, because doing materiality study just for the sake of doing materiality study will not bring you a value. The value is what you're going to do with those learnings afterwards.
Yeah. So I was kind of thinking really like, say, I haven't necessarily done a whole new materiality exercise, but what I've done is kind of tap into different parts of the organization in the listening that they're doing and how they engage. So then it doesn't feel like it's this big thing they have to do. Actually, it is part of their natural rhythm. But I would say, I would think you probably do it once a year, maybe a refresh, but it probably doesn't have to be a really extensive exercise, but maybe then every second year, make sure you're going out, maybe doing something a little bit different or a little bit more extensive. But
I think
it should be part of day to day that you're listening, shouldn't it? So
I think that's what I was just going to add on at the end of that. With some of our clients now, materiality is kind of formalizing those communication pathways that have been built already and bringing it into one space. So you're having these conversations with your suppliers or your customers, your employees, and it's bringing those learnings into one place where you can see what aligns, what doesn't, if anything shifted. So it doesn't have to be this really formal process that you roll out year on year, but making sure you're bringing those conversations in together and that you're sort of reflecting or evaluating how they compare is a useful thing. So yeah, agree.
And if I can share one learning from our past experiences, when we did our materiality study the first time, we found that people, our employees, were really engaged and really highly motivated to be part of that process. They wanted to share their opinion and they felt really listened to. And now they're seeing results, what happened to all those learnings. And I think that drives even higher engagement in a company. So there are benefits to materiality study beyond the results, if the process could be beneficial as well.
Alina, I totally agree. I think the one major consistent finding that we find from our materiality work we do with our clients is the surprise. There's always surprise from leaders as to the level of engagement from all corners of the business, as to the interest and the willingness and the desire to get involved. And I'm irrespective of how advanced that organization is on their ESG maturity or journey, there's still more than the leadership team thought they were going to have, which is wonderful to see. And it's just to see the surprise and the interest in the eyes of the leaders is just incredible and consistent for us. I think that we're going quite deep into materiality here, which is great. There's another question on it from Francis. I have a very biased opinion to your question, so I won't answer it. If you're limited with budget, do you think materiality assessments can be done internally, or is it useful or essential to have a third party to do it?
Well, we've done ours internally,
yeah.
So I think you can do it internally. I suppose like say the marketing guys or the BD MC guys, brand marketing guys, they were already listening to clients. They did various client listening exercises. So it was about kind of pulling that information in and maybe asking a few additional questions or adding a little bit to that. We already do sort of inductions and had sessions with certain employees as they were joining on graduate groups and stuff. So again, I could easily tap in to those kind of groups. And we've also got like a sustainability network of people. So again, then I could reach out to various employees and go to team meetings and things to try and extract information on what they think is important. And like I said, it does vary across the business. But yeah, we did it internally just because I could just tap into different areas. But I think it totally depends on your budget. But I wouldn't not do it. I think it's a really important thing to do.
Yeah, I think sometimes we act as a kind of an external shining a light where the blind spots.
Yeah. Actually,
what can we gain from experience elsewhere, and just adding a little bit of process. But Francis, absolutely, if you're limited on budget, it's something you should. Yeah, to Claire's point, absolutely do it. And I think that phrase, to your point previously, Alina, weighing in to buy in. If you allow people to weigh into the process when you're asking them to deploy it. We're in a workshop with the leadership team, a full day offsite, last week, where we were asking the functional heads, the execco functional heads, to take the strategy and then own it and deploy it. If they were involved in what was material in the first place, they're more likely to energetically move forward and put it into play. So yeah, good. Okay, well, there's quite a lot on materiality. I'd love to move to the bit that Ali opened up with, which is the integration of sustainability strategy with business strategy. I just wonder if each of you or any of you have experiences on trying to achieve that, where you've been successful and perhaps where it's been more difficult.
If I can start, I think it has to be an integration. For me, there is no other choice. I mean, if your business is pulling in one direction and you have another strategy for another area to pull in another direction, there's always going to be a priority setting, which will take into account your main purpose. So integration, for me, integration is key. I really like this is quite a new one for me. Ali showed, where the ESG actually is overarching the business strategy. And this is something what I would like to think about after the session. Because we talk about having a bigger purpose. We talk about why do companies exist beyond profit. And it's something that we discussed at our company as well. What's the purpose of our company? Because when you look at our website, our corporate website, we don't say we're here to make money. We're here to make positive, lasting memories. We're here to create a value beyond financial value. So I really like what Ali showed with the ESG actually being bigger than a business strategy. I don't know.
Patagonia is perhaps the poster child for that, being the case in the Patagonia organization, that the business is truly and legally serving a bigger purpose and impact. And I think it does stretch the thinking a little bit as to actually how can we inverse this, and that may not sit right for all organizations, but it's there to inspire or provoke more thinking on that.
Yeah, I think we haven't totally solved this yet, but I think we're on that journey in realizing that lawyers have quite a big role in making a lot of deals and transactions happen in the economy. So they're quite lucky in that way that they're involved in quite a lot of things. But I think they're only now really realizing that what they advise on, all the matters and the deals that they help to happen, that's actually where their main impact is. So, initially when people start off on this journey, they think about their scope 1 and 2 emissions because that's what you can measure. And then you realize, oh, actually, it's probably the scope 3 because there's a whole load of stuff we buy, and 90% of our emissions are in our supply chain. But I think actually we're realizing now probably it's beyond the scope 3, it's in our advised emissions and what we're enabling to happen. That's where the biggest impact or potential positive impact for us is. So we're starting to think through, and I'm not saying we've sorted it all, but starting to think through, so, what are the matters or the clients that you work with? How would you possibly start to rate them or put them in a category of high, medium or low carbon economy deals or transactions, and trying to think of it that way, and that gets you to think about this bigger purpose as to what the organization actually does, what it can really influence. So I'm hoping that we can really push more towards, we do a lot in tech and renewable energy, so actually we could have a really big role in scaling up and getting renewable energy out there more. So yeah, I think actually thinking about the bigger thing that we could help do is really strong and quite exciting.
I think that's the advised emissions. I think is really interesting. I think all the professional services work that we advise, or those in professional services, absolutely that's the case. And Evan, I think maybe coming to you on invested emissions as well, or from a financial point of view, it'd be interesting to get your take on that.
Yeah, sure. Because we work with firms, for example, like Taylor Wessing, where we'll be using big law firms, big auditors. And we have to start actually looking at that in our scope 3 and saying, well, we've got a part to play in that. We need to be, if we're using that, we need to then pull that into our emissions that we're reporting on. For us, for invested funds and property that we look after, we have to be looking at risk rating our clients. So for every company that we look after, we're developing a risk rating tool that actually captures ESG specific related risks. So stranded asset risk, climate risk, loads of different risks for our client. We already do that. For example, I'm based in Jersey, so we have extremely high regulation here. So what we have as our fiduciary duty is an all-encompassing duty to assess all risks, including ESG. So we're now trying to bring that into an existing software that we have to really kind of show that we are, really fulfilling our fiduciary duty, and then making sure that all risks are addressed for our clients as well. So it's a big one. I think it's a case of be patient, set your roadmap, set clear timelines, and make them achievable as well. But then we also work closely with our consultants to keep us in check and go, right, where are we at right now? Where do we need to prioritize? And that really helps kind of guide us on that journey. So I think, does that answer your question, or have I digressed a bit there? Sorry.
I think kind of thinking outside of the boundaries of an organization is so important, whether that's in the environmental side or on the social side. The influence that organizations have up or down the value chain is often underestimated. It's harder. It's more about influence than control. But I think there's a lot that organizations do that. We're seeing a lot of that as well. I really encourage everyone, if you've got a question, please do ask it either in the chat or put your hand up, and you can come off mute to ask that. And there's one that's come in from Sarah. Alina, you were talking about different size of organizations, and Sarah's question is, how can we scale what Ali was talking about to work for larger or smaller organizations? I think Sarah represents a perhaps a smaller organisation than those in the panel today. So I don't know if anyone has a view or comment on that. Ali, yourself as well, perhaps.
I can start. You know, if you're working for a really small business, your materiality study is going to be very small. I mean, you have customers, you have employees, and maybe you operate in a social area. So a simple questionnaire could find out, you know, what's important to your people, to your donors, as well as the people who come. I don't know if you sell anything as part of your charity. So just scale it down to whatever your business is to make it meaningful where you operate. But just remember to include all the stakeholders. So it's not only your employees within your organization, but stakeholders that are impacted by your business.
I think I have a really simple answer for doing something is better than nothing, and that you do have to scale it to be, you know, impactful, but that you can actually achieve it. So if we're talking about materiality, it might be the size of your materiality. If we're talking about ESG strategy, that's something that the B Corp framework, so that BIA, does really well. If you're a really small company, it readjusts itself to say what's doable, achievable, but also best practice for your kind of size, your industry, compared to, you know, a much bigger organization where you're going to be asked to push it that one step further. So I think using frameworks that have that adjustment, that give you best practice but take into consideration your size and what's achievable, is really useful for you, helping to think about that scale. But yeah, back to my first point of just doing something's better than nothing. So I think worrying about, you know, the scale or competing with industry leaders isn't going to help you get on that journey, and just starting somewhere is a really positive place to be. And once you start, you know, integrating into your everyday culture and it becomes the norm, then you can take it one step further. But yeah, just starting somewhere.
Thank you, Ali. I'd add something small on top of that, which is I think getting to simplicity beyond the complexity of the number of things that you could do. There's so many things that such a broad topic through the E, S, and G. I think irrespective actually of the size of organisation, but perhaps where you've got less resource, less time, for a smaller organisations, actually just picking things off that are going to create impact in the short term, whilst not letting go of that longer term ambition that Ali spoke of. Yes, thank you. Thanks for the questions, Sarah. I think perhaps we've got time for one more. Really great question from Angela that's come through, which is essentially around for industries or businesses that are perhaps inherently not positive. I think calling out there the automotive industry. How can we really square that away in terms of doing less or no harm? And I think this reminds me of, you know, often impact is used too freely by organisations who are saying they're doing positive things, but actually what they're doing is doing less harmful things. And I was wondering if any of the panelists have any views on that. You know, that of course we're all trying to do more good things, but also we've all got bad things about us, whether we're inherently, you know, we're making vehicles, or perhaps in professional services we're flying around the world to serve our clients. How can impact or the strategy talk to both doing more positive things but also doing less negative things?
Yeah, well, I suppose really, you know, you've got to be transparent about it and honest about it, and, you know, not try and hide the elephant in the room sort of thing. And you've got to tackle it head on, because like I say, it's not going to go away, and anything you say about, oh, I'm doing all this positive stuff over here, will be undermined if, you know, the elephant in the room is not addressed. So I think it's about balance in the conversation, and actually trying to tackle the issues, or show where it's hard to tackle that thorny issue, like in transition out of a certain area or tackle a certain problem. So I think it's about the openness of it really, and balance in your communication. Yeah,
balance in communication. I think it's a great point on that. And any other comments on that particular question?
I completely concur. It's about balance, and you have to make that judgment. I think if it wasn't a balance, the fossil companies would say, well, hey, we provide energy for all the world to be connected, so that's positive, is it? Without actually looking at the perhaps, you know, scarier part of the business and the environmental impact. So I think it's okay to talk about positive stuff. You know, we talk about positive stuff as well, but just don't forget the negative impact. And minimizing is the first part. You know, we cannot save the world. Not all of us can save the world, and we cannot change from day one. So doing something and showing that your commitments and actually following your path to reduction, I think that's something we have to strive for.
Thank you, Alina. I'm going to slide in one very final question here from Glenn, which I think is a great one to finish on, perhaps a comment from each of the panelists on this, which is, how do you remain resilient in this world when you don't have all the answers? As a sustainability leader in your organizations, we can't all have the answers. How do you remain resilient in that? Perhaps just a couple of lines from each of you to round off.
Yeah, look, and I think, like you say, the ES and the G can mean lots of things to lots of different people, and there's a lot of nuance evolving in certain subject areas. So you think you might have done the right thing, and then actually people realise that there's a bit more information has come to light, a new approach has come about, and so actually what you thought you were doing is no longer maybe the best approach. So I think it's about that North Star and being honest about where you're trying to get to, and then you are open to the discussion about how it's best to get there and the rest of it. So I don't think it's about saying you know all the answers and here's the perfect direction. It's about that stakeholder engagement means you're happy to understand what other people are thinking and see how things are changing and take that into account to, you know, steer it slightly differently, or take that into account when you're defining your future direction. So I kind of think it's about almost, is it osmosis, where you've got to take in these things and actually try and find a way forward. Don't set yourself up on a pedestal that you know all the answers and, you know, here you go, you've got it sorted, here it is. You've got to listen to people as you go along that journey. Conscious
of time, I just wanted to like a one-liner from Evan and Alina, just to round off from you as well, would be great.
Yeah, sure. I think no one's an expert in ESG. It's so broad. It's an absolute beast of a topic. It involves everything. So I think don't be scared to put up your hand and say, I don't understand. Like, reach out to consultants, reach out to other experts in their own field. That's definitely something that I am true to. So yeah, just collaborate. I think collaborative approach is key for that one.
Thanks, Evan.
So I would add, remain curious. Curious and look for opportunities. It's not only about risk, it's not only about what we can't do, it's about the opportunities and how to create a value. So be curious.
Love that. Great word to end on for us to go into our day. Be curious. Thank you, Alina. Thank you to all speakers and for everyone being here today. Just to round off, Ali, just to remind everyone that this is a monthly event. And our next session will be on the 9th of January as we return for our new year, which is defining your carbon and net zero targets, which is applicable. I think there was some comments, particularly Alina and from Claire, that's a focus for them right now. So thank you all so much. I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope you feel inspired to go forward into your working days from here, and look forward to seeing you next time round for our next breakfast briefing. And yeah, stay curious. I think that's a nice thing to end on. Thank you all.